Here we have De-Glamour. For 2 mana, it's an instant. Choose target artifact or enchantment. Its owner shuffles it into his or her library. Very good removal. Next card is Early Harvest for 3. Target player untaps all basic lands he or she controls. Really a turnaround card, but there are probably newer cards you could replace. Still an instant that you can do that with, like Cackling Counterpart. Put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of target creature you control, and then you flash back for 7, spending 10 to make 2 tokens, but using 1 card to do so. Mystic Genesis is a 5-cost instant. Counter target spell, put an XX green ooze creature token onto the battlefield where X is that spell's converted mana cost. Very cool if you're using ooze especially. It's very flavorful, as we have Plasma Capture for 4. Counter target spell. At the beginning of your next pre-combat main phase, add X mana in any combination to colors to your mana pool where X is that spell's converted mana cost. So, not a whole lot to say other than it's a mana gaining counter spell, because we have Aether Snatch, an expensive instant. Gain control of target spell. You may choose new targets for it, giving you options that the opponent may not have. Curse of Predation, having one of the better powerful effects for a Aura Curse. 3 mana, green. Enchant player, whenever a creature attacks the enchanted player, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Giving you a lot of benefits for Edric Spymaster of Trest's effect as we go into a forest, another forest, 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 forest. Because, you know, he's an elf. He would live in a forest. But here's an island. You know, he lives in Ravnica. So he'd be in there's also islands, green, blue, elves. Don't really know the lore of Ravnican elves. But they're pretty cool because we have more island. Get into the islands. Very scenic on an island. Some of them being a Llanowar Reborn now. Llanowar Reborn enters the battlefield tapped. Add green to your mana pool. Graft 1, giving a creature a +1/+1 counter when you choose to. Add 1 of any color for Alchemist's Refuge. Tap 1 green, 1 blue, and itself. You may cast the next non-land cards as though they had flash, giving a lot of utility to those other cards that had instant, that were not instants. This card making them instant speed with flash. Into the Yavimaya Coastland, tapping, giving you colorless, or pinging you for 1 damage to create blue or green. The Halimar Depths enters tapped. Halimar Depths controls. When Halimar Depths enters the battlefield, look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put them back in any order, and it taps for blue mana. Simic Growth Chamber. A Simic Growth Chamber comes into play tapped. Return a land to your control when it enters. It adds both blue and green. A Reliquary Tower, in case you don't get Praetor's Council right away. Reliquary Tower giving you no maximum hand size and adding colorless to your mana pool. A Simic Guildgate, which enters tapped and gives you blue or green. Colony Garden, just for a 0/1 creature token when it enters the battlefield and producing green mana. Oran Reef Vastwood enters the battlefield tapped. Add 1 green mana to your mana pool, or tap it, add 1 green, add 1 +1/+1 counter on each green creature that entered the battlefield this turn. We also have Hydra Omnivore, which is a green creature. Whenever Hydra Omnivore deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent, dealing everybody 8 damage. Of course, the first time it deals damage, that would be combat damage. Kazandu Mammoth, being a land on the other side that you pay life to keep it untapped. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, Kazandu Mammoth gets +2/+2 until the end of turn for a 3/3 elephant for 3. So they learned a lot from Zendikar with the step links, and that's just a better version for landfall effects. Step links being more at rate with 2 mana cost. Jade Light Ranger. I think I've taken this out of attracts, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I had more than one, but Jade Light Ranger is another card that's very good. When it enters the battlefield, you explore and then explore again. It's a 2/1. I'm not explaining explore. Winged Coatl is a 3-cost 1/1 flash flying death touch. All three good things to hear. 3-cost kill spell, if you will. Phyrexian Metamorph being a artifact creature shapeshifter. Whenever Phyrexian Metamorph enters the battlefield as a copy of an artifact or creature on the battlefield, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. So you can pay 3, copy a card, and lose 2 life, or just play it as for 4. Teferi, Temporal X-Mage, is a Planeswalker. Teferi, of course, enters with 5 loyalty. Look at the 2 cards of your library for his +1 effect. Put one to your hand and the other to your bottom of your library. -1 is untap 4 target permanents. Wow. Yeah, just do that. You get an emblem with activate the loyalty ability of planeswalkers on any players. No, I don't care about that. Just do the untapping lands for the most part. Keep them alive if you can. Primal Speaker Zagana for 4, 5, 6. She's a 1/1 Merfolk Wizard, but she gets pretty big because Primal Speaker Zagana enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the greatest power among other creatures you control. When Primal Zagana enters the battlefield, draw cards equal to its power. So it can be quite a sweep to have 2 huge creatures, especially when you copy it with a Phantasmal Image. For 2 costs, you may have Phantasmal Image enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it's an illusion in addition to its other types, and as we know, it gains when this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability. Sacrifice it. Illusions don't really last long, because Roll Elemental, a flying 3/2, with landfall, can say, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may gain control of target creature for as long as you control Roll Elemental. If you were to say target a creature that says when it's targeted, sacrifice it, now this guy becomes a kill spell. When Jace Beleren for 3 has 3 loyalty counters, +2, each player draws a card, -1, target player draws a card, -10, target player puts the top 20 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Not that useful, mostly for the draw effect. He keeps everyone drawing cards, as you might want to draw Rampaging Baloth. Trample, 6/6 for 6. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may play a 4/4 green beast token onto the battlefield. Yeah, the new Zendikar made a new version, but you always want to play the old version because Mind Shrieker is here, and it's a 2-cost 1/1 flying creature spirit bird. For 2, target player puts the top card of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Mind Shrieker gets +X/+X until the end of turn, where X is that card's converted mana cost. If you know what the top card is, it can be incredibly strong, and if you can dump a bunch of mana into it, you're milling the opponent out, but not the most useful point of it. The whole point is controlling the game, reducing the amount of cards the opponents have, making sure that you have the strongest attack power. With Talrand the Sky Summoner, he's a bit overplayed as a 2/2 for 4. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a 2/2 blue Drake creature token with flying onto the battlefield. Its value to get more 2/2 creatures. We have Mercfiend Liege, which is a 5-cost 4/4. Other green creatures you control get +1/+1. Other blue creatures you control get +1/+1. Untap all green and or blue creatures you control during each other player's untap step. That is a very useful effect that they try to limit in EDH, so him having it makes it all the more worthwhile as a banner as well. Scoot Mob is a 1-cost 1/1, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 5 or more lands, put 4 +1/+1 counters on Scoot Mob. Wow, if you search for all those lands, you get to have a Scoot Mob? That's pretty crazy. As we have Oran Reef Vampire, a 3-cost 1/3 snow creature snake. Whenever Oran Vampire, yeah, it's Oran Vampire, not Oran Reef. Oran Vampire deals combat to a creature. Destroy that creature at the end of combat. When Oran Vampire deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. So he'll let you draw twice. When we have Jalira, Master Polymorphist, for 3, tap it, sacrifice another creature. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a non-legendary creature card. Put that card to the bottom onto the battlefield and the rest of the bottom of your library in any order. She is the Polymorph card, therefore tap her, sacrifice one of your tokens, bring in a real creature, or just save a creature and bring out a new thing. As we have Wonder, one of the cards you want to sacrifice. 3 colorless mana of any kind and 1 blue mana. It's a creature incarnation, flying, as long as the Wander, not the Wander, it's just Wander. As long as Wander is in your graveyard and you control an island, creatures you control have flying. You're most likely going to have an island. So your creatures are most likely going to have flying. Do not play Hurricane at the same time unless your board is clear. As Myojin of the Seeing Winds is a 10 cost Japanese god. It's a legendary creature, Spirit Kami. Myojin of the Seeing Winds comes into play with a divinity counter. If you played it from your hand, it's indestructible as long as it has a divinity counter. You know, Atraxa could probably proliferate that. Remove a divinity counter from Myojin of the Seeing Winds. Draw a card for each permanent you control. If you paid 10, that's probably 10 lands. Well, with Teferi you could untap 4, but that's a lot of permanents to draw cards from. Lore Scale Coatl, Snake 2/2. Whenever you draw a card, you may put a +1/+1 counter on Lore Scale Coatl. What a surprise. Rashmi, Eternity Crafter, for 4. She's an Elf Druid legendary creature. Whenever you cast your first spell each turn, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a non-land card with converted mana cost less than the spells, you may cast it without paying its cost. If you don't, reveal it. If you don't cast the revealed card, put it to your hand. Kind of like a cascade effect. Because we have Ludwig's Test Subject. He's a Defender Lizard, 0/3, and when he has enough hatchling counters, 5 or more, remove all of them and transform him. And what would we transform him into? Ludwig's Abomination. Trample 13/13. So he came out of the egg. Here we have Invisible Stalker. For 2, he's a hexproof 1/1. Invisible Stalker is unblockable. Wow, that's like a Whisper Silk Cloak, but for free. Tornado Elemental for 7. Creature Elemental 6/6. When Tornado Elemental enters the battlefield, it deals 6 damage to each creature with flying. Again, don't play this with Wonder on the field. Or in your graveyard, I guess. You may have Tornado Elemental assign combat damage as though it weren't blocked. And technically, that's not the same wording as Trample. Here we have Shapesharer, who has 2 cost, Changeling, pay 3 mana, one of it being blue. Target Shapeshifter becomes a copy of target creature until your next turn. So this Shapeshifter can be any creature. Or another Shapeshifter can be any creature. Arbiter of the Ideal is for 6. 4/5 flying, inspired. When it becomes untapped, I think we saw this before, you just create the manifest top card of your deck. It gets a manifestation counter if that permanent is an enchantment and its additional types, if it's an artifact, creature, or land. Pretty good. So you want to attack with it, draw cards. When it untaps, you get more cards. Archetype of Endurance for 8. It's a creature boar. Creatures you control have hexproof. Creatures your opponents control have hexproof, so that's a pretty strong effect. 6/5. Self-explanatory why you want it, as we have Beguiler of Wills. Creature Human Wizard for 5, 1/1. Gain control of target creature with power less than equal to the number of creatures you control. More creatures you have, the stronger this gets, as you keep stealing the opponent's creatures. When we have Birds of Paradise, very simple, self-explanatory, flying, 0/1. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. When we have Cursor of Cursor, Enchantment creature Centaur. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play the top card of your library if it's a land card. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life. Useful, simple, gains you life. Does reveal the top card, but you want lands, as we have a very old Dire Wolves. For 3, gains banding if you control any planes. What the fuck? One moment. That's not right. That was just supposed to gains banding. So a basic camel is better than this card. What can this deck use instead? That would be in flavor. No, these are all boring as fuck. Metamorphic Alteration, no. Manchester Scepter, no. Rain of Thorns. Oh, Kindred Discovery, no. So, you know, fuck. Gadwick, what the fuck? Kaya's Rat. Biovisionary? No. Hell, even fucking Sprouting Vines is better. Wilding, rolled D4, choose one creature as a result. Create a number of 3/3 beasts equal to that result, then search your library for a number of basic land cards equal to put them to the battlefield. For 6. Roll 2d4 and choose one. Compared to Dire Wolves, which is a 3 cost. Or I could have a Colossus for 4. Changeling protection for black. Oh, this is better. That's embarrassing. Fuck. This card is no good. Let's get that out of here. Gains banding if you control any planes. No. That shouldn't have been in there. Chameleon Colossus. Straight up. Changeling protection for black. Pay 4. Gets +X/+X until the end of turn, where X is its power. Honest mistake there. As we have Fathom Mage. Evolve. Enters the battlefield. +1/+1 counter. You draw a card whenever Fathom Mage gets a +1/+1 counter. Fertilid for 3. Enters with 2 mana. Or 2 +1/+1 counters. You pay 2 mana. Remove a +1/+1 counter. Target player searches his or her library for a basic land card. Puts it on the battlefield. Very staple draw power for land. Flitterstep Eidolon is a 2 cost 1/1. Flitterstep Eidolon can't be blocked, but it also has Bestow. So as an enchantment creature spirit, it says, as you cast this card for 6 for its Bestow cost, it's an aura spell with an enchant creature. It becomes a creature again if it's not attached to a creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and can't be blocked. So for 6, unblockable, +1/+1, and a free creature afterwards. Forgotten Ancient gets a +1/+1 counter when a player plays a spell. At the beginning of your upkeep, move any number of +1/+1 counters from Forgotten Ancient to another creature. Gyre Sage being a creature that has Evolve. So whenever a creature stronger than it comes into the battlefield, it gets a +1/+1 counter. Tap, add a green mana for each +1/+1. So, adds a green mana for each +1/+1 counter on it. Forgotten Ancient, giving it more +1/+1 counters. Very simple synergy. When we have Horizon Chimera. Flash, Flying Trample. Whenever you draw a card, you gain 1 life. In Edric Spymaster of Trest, a very, very strong effect. Here we have Hornet Nest. If your opponent really does have good flying effects and you have not had a chance to put Wonder to the graveyard, Hornet's Nest will have Creature, Defender, Insect, 0/2. Whenever Hornet Nest is dealt damage, put that many 1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and death touch onto the battlefield. Now we have Increasing Savagery. Put 5 +1/+1 on target creature. If Increasing Savagery was cast from your graveyard, put 10 +1/+1 counters on that creature instead. Very useful. Now we go into draw power for Harmonize, 4 mana. A Unexpected Results for 4 mana. Shuffle your library, reveal the top card. If it's a non-land card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. If it's a land card, you may put that card onto the battlefield and return unexpected results to its owner's hand. So just keep bouncing it if you get a land, and we get a new card if it's not. As we have Enlarge for 5. Target creature gets +7/+7 and gains trample. It must be blocked this turn if able, and until the end of turn it gains this effect. Now we go into the last card, Urban Evolution. Draw 3 cards. You may play an additional land this turn, letting you have more land, more draw power, more effects to get ahead and have the lead for your win conditions. Very good effects. Boy, I definitely think this card is pretty cool, but it's not going to be in this deck. Even the Chameleon Colossus doesn't feel like especially flavorful, but with the other Shapesharer, it works. So that's why we have all the different guys. There we have it.